Good evening. Let me get started. Thank you for coming with us tonight, or being here with us tonight.
I don't think the microphone.
No? Hello? So, thanks for coming tonight. This exhibit has been the three of us since May working. Without the sabbatical, we never would happen. Thank you. But it really wouldn't have happened over the last 3 or 4 days without the help of a few really great students: Robert, Christian, Bill, Chris, Sarah, Clayton, and Vince and Aaron. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know where you are, but you know, I'm sure you will be happy to sleep. So 5 by 5 participatory provocations is an exhibit of 25 architecture monoliths by 25 young American architects, dealing with 5 contemporary issues, each addressed by 5 different firms. The exhibit is sponsored in part by the Max and Bromwitz Fund and others as well, and curated by Julia Vandenhout, Kyle May, and myself. Julia is the founder of Original Copy and co-founder and editor of Claude. As on expos and World's Fairs centered around the Milan Expo, she curated New Views, the rendering and an image at the Art Institute. Prior to founding Original Copy, Julia was the director of press and marketing at Stephen Hall Architects for 6 years, where she was responsible for developing and coordinating the PR strategy for over 30 projects and competitions, organizing the opening and publication of 12 completed projects, and the coordination of multiple traveling exhibitions. She has a master's degree in criticism from the School of Visual Arts in New York City. Kyle, who's, I think this is the 3rd trip to Illinois, is a practicing thanks for coming and back. Is a practicing architect in New York City, Kyle May Architects, and co-founder and editor-in-chief of Claude Journal, which I see on Studio Test, so I'm sure he appreciates that. It's a quarterly architecture journal that's been published 14 issues to date, probably a listserv of at least 10,000 people, and quite a high circulation. He's currently editing the first monographs of Rex Lexington and writing a book on Wallace K. Harrison with Julie. He's also curated an exhibition at the Art Institute, served on the advisory panel of Kent State University's College of Architecture, teaches at RISD, and he's been accredited pretty much everywhere. And myself, you know who I am. Thanks for showing up to at least see me. I'll turn it over to you.
So a little bit more about the exhibition. I'm sorry, my slides are very messed up. Architecture as a profession struggles to simultaneously engage with the public and be provocative within the confines of its own field. We most often talk to other architects and aren't often in conversation with other fields. And either arguments or proposals get dumbed down, or they simply aren't accessible or relevant to anybody else. So this exhibition argues for participatory criticism. We identified a series of significant popular issues. These are headlines we see every day. And we asked 25 creative minds to take clear stances and then produce a physical manifestation on these topics as a means of communicating with the public. The avant-garde in architecture has for decades captured its imaginations by a two-dimensional representation, but this exhibition asks each of our firms to be just as provocative in 3 dimensions. We asked each of these firms to create one model and make it as clearly communicative as possible. We only gave them 100 words to be able to explain their model, and no drawings to supplement it, no sketches, just the one model. The selected topics intend to provoke, but we feel they're still grounded in issues that we widely face today, from a growing income gap, immigration, globalization, technology's impact on our lives, surveillance, and power. And we believe architecture has a seat at each discussion.
So I'm just going to quickly go over the 5 topics that we have. The first one up here is drone ports. You've probably seen a lot of discussions of drones these days and how drones are now being thought of to move products instead of trucking them everywhere. So Amazon, of course, is trying to get drones to deliver toothpaste to you in the morning when you realize you're out. Just go on Amazon and get a new tube of toothpaste. So that topic is really kind of asking these architects to consider a lot of different, how that affects our built environment. Whether it be how a product actually gets into your house or the network involved around these drones and what new infrastructure is required. The investment power, we're all practicing in New York, and it's something that is extremely prevalent in New York, also in Miami and all over the world, really. But it's this idea of people buying the most expensive penthouse, for just an investment, and 5 years later selling it for twice the price, but not even living in it. And what happens to our urban condition when we have people, just using architecture as an investment and not as a habitable structure, and what that means to these towers. The Luna Resort. Is obviously the idea of kind of what happens when luxury goes to space. What that means. You see SpaceX and Virgin Galactic, these private interest groups going into space. It's not just NASA and the Russians. It's private interests now. So what does luxury mean on the moon? The NSA community branch is provocation. It's not actually happening as far as we know, but yet. But it's the idea that the NSA is in our lives. We don't see it, but they are. And there's obviously backlash to some of these privacy concerns. So this is a fictional, at least we think a fictional provocation of what happens if the NSA wants to reach out and start embracing the local communities to help its PR out a little bit, but maybe also there's something subversive happening. And then the last one is very popular at the moment. Donald Trump, almost a year ago now, said that he wanted to build a wall between the United States and Mexico to keep the Mexicans out. So, this asks architects to imagine, if a wall between the U.S. and Mexico should be built, what that would look like, and what are the implications of building a 2,000-mile long wall.
Can you guys hear okay in the back? Is this microphone sufficient? Okay. So with that, in these 5 categories, we invited 5 architects from 5 very interesting firms. The whole lot of 25 is the next generation of up-and-coming people. And unfortunately, tonight we have with us a selection of one individual representing, or at least sometimes multiple individuals, but every topic is represented here. So we have Andrew Kovacs from LA, who just arrived in the nick of time with his model. So thank you. He's a visiting assistant professor at UCLA, studied at Syracuse, AA, and Princeton, and he's written for everything. And he's also the curator for Archive of the Affinities. I think something about the B-sides he's interested in. And NSA Community Branch, one of our own, David Emmons, a designer, lecturer, and collaborator based here, recently served as a project architect for the University of Illinois' Sustainable Student Farm, and has collaborated with Fresh Press and Jeff Potts. And then also in that category of NSA branches, we have Michael Abrahamson, who's a designer, critic, PhD candidate at Michigan, and writes about the ideas of Gunnar Burkhardt is what he's writing on right now, and brutalism as well. So basically, he has this amazing Tumblr account called F Yeah Brutalism with over 200,000 followers. Right? That's a pretty big following cult. And then in drone ports, we have Norden, who is a young, forward-thinking design studio. I guess if that's young, I'm an old, forward-thinking design studio. The name comes after the word German term for north. The studio sees itself as a guide creating meaningful design and is striving to create cohesive products and experiences. Representing the lunar category is Jennifer Marmon from LA as well. So we have 2 East Coast and 2 West Coast coming out. We didn't do it just to save money on shipping. We really wanted to. Jennifer was recently a jury on the PA Awards. Has something coming up in Venice, and has a lovely website. You should actually take a look. And then lastly, representing the trunk wall is Kyle here. So tonight's format is going to be quick 5-minute, 6-minute presentations, 20 slides, 18 seconds a slide. We're gonna bust through these things in about 30 minutes, and then we're gonna have a round table, and hopefully you all can launch some pretty provocative and kind of interesting questions out of this afternoon. So with that, our first one is Andrew Kovacs.
Well, thanks. Thanks to Kyle, Julia, and Kevin for inviting me. And thanks to the University of Illinois for hosting. So this presentation is called Making Architecture from Architecture. And I would say that it's probably a good way to explain the model out there, but also other aspects of my work. There are 2 steps to making architecture from architecture. The first step is browsing, searching, tracking, gathering, grouping, organizing, comparing, collecting, and selecting. The second step, I would say, is flattening, copying, scaling, assembling, combining, compacting, mixing, reorganizing, etc. This is my work. Many different layers. This was at the Graham Foundation in Chicago as part of the Treatise series. The first layer of that previous one is maybe this, which was mentioned. This is my collection of images that I scanned called Archive Infinities. So each one is searched out from old media of the past. And then sometimes they're grouped here, for example, maybe 25 different square plans. There's a number of these. I'm only showing this one. I wish I could control the slides a bit more. So then sometimes I'll take fragments of those plans and reorganize them into other plans. So fragments become new wholes, as here, for example, a plan for a 9-square grid. I also collect many objects, and they're scanned on the same scanner. Here in 2 views, maybe to kind of suggest a plan or elevation. I would say all of these objects that I collect and gather have some sort of architectural quality. And then here they're physically assembled either as a proposed addition for a house or in a much more maybe maniacal compaction in a, say, speculative environment. Sometimes they're actually submitted as competition proposals. So this is my entry for the Guggenheim Helsinki competition as a kind of large field of different compactions of these objects. But they also kind of maybe make their way into more practical projects. So this is a renovation of an Airstream trailer for a mobile shop to sell swimsuits, where the objects are reoriented and mounted on the wall, become hooks. And maybe some of them have a kind of reference. For example, here, a train coming out of the trailer maybe would make you think of the Magritte painting. Sometimes they make their way in other proposals. So that, for example, this is a proposal for a dog park. It's part of a master plan that actually Jennifer was part of. And maybe this was conceived of as a miniature master plan inside the larger master plan with different districts for different dog functions. But there are also kind taken from, so the statue from the Barcelona Pavilion and transplanted into Philip Johnson's pool. Here are some other groupings from the collection of archived affinities, a grouping of various vertical conglomerates. And maybe this is a way to set up the model outside. So these are other proposals of buildings made from other buildings. All of these are screenshots. Push next, but so this is the tower that was made for investment towers. It was the closest in proportion, maybe, to the bounding box that was given by the curators. And so here you can see the building that it comes from, and then it's slightly manipulated, and then kind of stacked, and then made white, and given an obligatory grass roof or roof garden. It was thought maybe also as a kind of stack of villas savoises, that it could be potential housing. Here's one version of the model. So it's, even though the proposal is made basically from taking screenshots digitally and then manipulating them in 2D, then that 2D image is digitally modeled in 3D, but then physically modeled for the exhibition. But then here, it's proposed to be even bigger. So that's kind of maybe my position, that on an investment tower, that you could take one thing, manipulate its scale and size, and use it for different things. Thanks.
So I'm going to talk about the next category, which is the NSA community branch, which my proposal titled 2046 an Invisible Odyssey. Just a little history about the project, basically. So in order to do this, I really had to first understand what the NSA is, what they are. So in 1952, right, basically it was formed by President Harry S. Truman. This is the original proposal here. And you see it here, very flat, modernist building. This is in Maryland, for those of you that don't know. And I kind of view this as the young recognition of this special force, which I Skywalker. 10 years later, in 1963, they added a 9-story addition, basically including the presence of the building. So you can see it's kind of U-shaped and getting taller. And we all know what happens to Anakin Skywalker. What he becomes in 1986. This is actually, honestly, the first thing I thought of when I saw the building, the images of the building. Right? You think of Darth Vader and his weird presence. So you can see here the image, all the different pieces here coming together. And I guess questioning, why does it have this really intimidating presence? This is in Fort Meade, Maryland. The idea is that it's close to Washington, D.C., but it's not exactly in D.C. The NSA, the National Security Agency, is basically what we see as this giant cloud that is basically surveying all of us and all of our cell phones, track records, internet searches, and so forth. And so here's some of the older images, I guess, of the computer systems that they had in the 70s and 80s. Which we all know that nowadays I think that the NSA is dealing with this issue of the computer is both a friend and an enemy in this case, and so this was an old sketch of their recruitment process. And I couldn't go back to read it, but anyway, it was forward. And so with this premise that I guess Kyle or Kevin or Julia wrote, I pointed out these different things here, the intimidating, blah, blah, blah. So I asked, how can a building or series of buildings be secretive and private, but also visible in public, enhance the community and future generations, and embrace innovation while maintaining the premise of safety and security? And so I thought it was interesting that if you look at this timeline, basically the beginnings of NSA, 52 to 1986, basically took 30 years to create their building infrastructure. 2016, exactly 30 years later, we're looking at the building, and so that's why the title of my project is 2046, an invisible odyssey. It's kind of speculating about 30-year intervals within the NSA. And this was an interesting quote that I found, the difference between no such agency versus no secret agency. And so the proposal that I have out in the gallery right now is, I guess, a metaphor or almost literal iceberg. And so what the idea was is that you have these different lines or layers of visibility, security, and privacy. So what we see above the ground, which is highly visible, is also what is very highly public. And as you move deeper into the ground, things in space become more private, harder to get to, and more secure. So I don't have any photographs or anything from the model. You can see the model out there. It's kind of looks exactly like this diagram here, though. And you can see here that the idea is that if the NSA were to reach out to the community, what would happen? And the idea is that basically they build these underground bubbles or these infrastructure basically below ground in every town in the United States. At the ground level or at the surface where it's highly visible, they develop in STEM research, right? Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So they build this infrastructure, these buildings of facilities for education for basically future employees of the NSA. And then within there, all these kind of public or semi-public spaces, such as spaces for recruitment, spaces for lectures, almost a museum of sorts. So that way it kind of creates this gradient as you move down below the iceberg. And this is just the last image, again, showing the expansive nature of the United States and imagining thousands of these facilities everywhere. Thank you.
I have notes. Thanks to Kevin, Julia, and Kyle for the invitation. I'm mostly a critic, so this is like natural for me to write something and then read it. So I've taken this more as a thought experiment than as a design project per se. My title is a groundbreaking partnership, and the project is located in the sort of possible future that I'll describe in a minute here. So my research actually began with the NSA's logo. The typography feels contemporary, but the eagle and key feels like a throwback to a kind of older era of federal governance that doesn't really gel with the way we understand the NSA today. It feels diplomatic, I guess. I'm not going to talk about that last image that you just saw. I guess I will say I'm more interested in the older part of the building. So when I thought about a community branch, I immediately thought of satellites, and the way satellites might be a kind of dematerialized community branch. I also love the NSA's logos for things. In this case, the PRISM program that Edward Snowden revealed, which collects metadata from phone records. And these things have no architecture, I guess, and I'm interested in that. I'm wondering how a PRISM branch might work. This is actually from the PowerPoint that Edward Snowden revealed the PRISM program with. So it just shows the extent to which the NSA is surveillance. So my project is based on this fictional scenario where I'm imagining that the NSA decides to go into the cell phone business. Imagine that Facebook and Twitter and all those companies decide to stop giving them their data. My proposal is that they found this thing called Priam Wireless. There are lots of reasons why Priam. I guess I'm not going to go into all of them, but it's a 3-tier service. Lifeline service is roughly based on the Obama phone. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. But, it's a free cell phone service, but in this case, the NSA would be handling all of your data. Premium service permits you to visit your local branch and have a consultation about your behavior with the local NSA agent.
And then finally, the executive service, which permits you to visit what I'm calling Faraday vaults in your local community branch, where you can see the data the NSA has collected about you and selectively edit it. So this is going to be expensive. So you pay a lot in order to tell them who you are. But back to the architecture. So as I mentioned, I'm more interested in the older part of this building, mostly because it looks to me like, not necessarily like a bland modernist building, but really like a kind of industrial shed, a warehouse almost, which made me think of the NSA more like a tech firm, like a bunch of nerds sitting in an industrial loft. I'm also fascinated by the fact that this was built in the 50s, at the same time that the State Department had an architecture program where they were trying to sort of reinvent what US embassies could be. And mostly what that meant was that they tried to make modern architecture monumental. And so that meant apparently columns and big overhangs and huge eagle logos. During the Cold War, that wasn't the only thing the State Department was building. They were also building these things called America houses all over Germany especially, but also all over Europe. And these were meant to sort of give Europeans a positive opinion of American culture by providing open access to information about it. Unfortunately, when the NSA got around to building a sort of community branch in the same place, it's not quite the same thing. It's intimidating and more about surveillance than about extending a sort of open access to information. So as you can see, there are a lot of things at stake in my design. Functionally, it's a branch for Prion Wireless. So it's a sales branch for the 3 tiers. On the basement levels, I provided some data center. I'm sure they have plenty of data for that. Architecturally, I'm sort of toying with aspects of diplomatic architecture, but also looking at Apple's community branches, Apple stores, because it's a cell phone store. I wrote about those for Clog, actually, a couple of years ago, if you're interested. Overall, I would say I'm aiming for what Allison and Peter Smithson called the heroically ordinary, which I think is a really great description of the Apple Store aesthetic.
Patent number 9925113 is my submission for this exhibit. And one thing I'm realizing, don't curate, contribute. The first drones were used in Venice, actually, in 1849, as the Austrians were sending bombs and hot air balloons to attack the maritime city. And like most technology, it starts off as this militarization of advances, whether that be in aerospace or materiality, and then somehow finds its way into our kind of daily life. And so, now we have this idea of watch out, pizza boy, you're going to be replaced. In this kind of rural environment where things are distributed and arrival by drones is actually going to be convenient. But of course, as we all know, I don't know if you follow the news, there has been drones being shot down as they are prying upon daughters sunbathing in the backyards in Oklahoma. And this brings up this issue of surveillance and privacy. They are going to collect information. However, don't fear, there are the drone pirates, and they are surveying your skies, collecting your toothpaste, and making sure that no one is watching. It's going to happen. I mean, we don't need these things droning overhead. But as Amazon fights for that 200 to 400 space within our cities, how do we deal with this? It's going to happen. It is happening. So in the urban context, I think we face different issues than we do in the rural context. And that there's like a cacophony of elements within the streets. It's chaos. You're walking to work. You're trying not to step in dog crap. Your phone is ringing. There's drips hitting you. You're trying not to get hit by the delivery man. And all of this we're trying to understand. Not to mention the kind of 19th example, fixed elements within our urban environment. They take up valuable space in the most important and dynamic form of public space in the city, the sidewalk, right? So the sidewalk is typically the network or the vein of cities. Why would we need drones when anything is delivered within 30 minutes or less? If you need that new shirt from Saks, phone up Uber Messenger and they'll be there pressed, not quite fitted yet. With that though, it does kind of add to this chaos of the streetscape. So there's no way a drone can get down to the street with the trees, the buses, the cars, the people. Not only are you going to have drone pirates, but you're going to have people knocking out drones. So the one thing that every building in the city has in common are rooftop access doors. So essentially, stairs go up, you can access the roof, patch the holes, service the AC. And this is where patent number 991332 intervenes. It looks at the small scale and the big scale, the periphery, where we're already using the periphery to transfer waste out of the city or to bring people in as the Pope arrives or as your garbage leaves. The periphery is always seen as this kind of utilitarian space or territory. And so I'm arguing here to shift that away from waste management to these kind of drone hives, where one can co-opt that in service of both redistribution, but also in addition of public space. So how do we take Amazon's heightened consumerism in a typical facility and pair that with a public access point and move it from the periphery, a further periphery, and relocate it so that way the drone can enter your drone doggy door on your rooftop access. So this is the actual patent pending elements. RFID, fly down your stairwell when you can't quite leave to get that toothpaste because you have a meeting in 30 minutes and you have to get into the shower. So the different elements, thank you, Clayton, of getting this accomplished. And basically, for me though, the most valuable thing is not heightening our consumerization of the urban environment, but it's what they can take away. So these infrastructures are often seen right now as existing one-way systems. And for me, a design that adds value is one that can relieve this environment, but also be a two-way system. So the 50 sack of Nespresso that I don't have to mail back in creating this project, the drone can collect it and create a new drone economy.
All right, should I just push?
Yes.
Okay. Before I start, thank you for the brief.
Yeah, that's okay. But I only have 7 slides. Yeah, I thought my point can be done in 7 slides, so why use more?
Very German.
Yes, very to the point. But thank you for this exciting opportunity. It was great to design this drone port. We looked at this as the rural drone port, which is located all across the US, you might say. Why rural drone port? But we have really, this is vast. Most of the United States is actually empty. And where's the next slide? Oh, there it is. So you see all these spikes, those are the densely populated areas, and those we don't have to worry about. We really have to worry about the areas in between where people don't have access to toothpaste, to whatever they need in the daily life, and they can't just run to the store because every delivery actually needs a surcharge, and there are thousands of zip codes that fall into this category, not only in the United States but also in Alaska. And the prices range from $1.50 to $2.50 per package. And so we start with the redesign of the package, and we're actually going to make a spherical package with air pockets in between that secure the cargo safely in the middle of the sphere. And a ginormous drone, a carrier drone, actually delivers a bunch of these packages into a redistribution center, which eventually will distribute them to your own home. And these redistribution centers are all across the country, in every little village. Here's what the process actually looks like. So the drone approaches, they have a landing strap, the packages roll out of the storage tank, the drone picks it up and brings it to your home. And delivered into a specialized net Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to Kyle, Julia, and Kevin for inviting myself and my firm to be part of this. It's interesting. So, yes, I'm with Par from Los Angeles, and we designed a lunar resort, which we really thought of more as a lunar colony. And just start. Yeah, so thinking about why people would want to go to the moon, and what is the benefit really of taking the journey and temporarily leaving Earth to explore this new frontier. And we thought that it would need to offer more than just a vacation, but something completely other that would have no relationship to experiences on Earth. And it would be a break from life on Earth with different forms of food, clothing, currency, architecture, and atmosphere to provide some sort of new understanding for people. Just a couple images here of life on Earth, the chaotic life on Earth, also commerce, compliments of Andrzej Gursky. I thought I would actually run out of time to talk, but I'm at the end of my slides. Earthy commerce at its finest. And so, to make something new, we thought we needed to go back to the beginning of architecture, to something primitive, to think about what the space could be for a lunar colony. So we're really thinking about it as a lunar colony, not so much as just a resort, because we think that if you're going to make the trek out to the moon, you're going to stay for a period, maybe a month or at least. And so here's some early primitive cave dwelling, and then other forms of primitive habitation, more at the scale of the human. And so we were also, in thinking about this and thinking about, okay, what can a sort of new type of space be like that has no relationship to Earth? Of course, there's a utopian impulse, and we started kind of considering fundamentals of society and space, and took a look back at this historic legacy of the utopian plan. And so, here's Corbusier, a few other references that I'm sure you're all familiar with. The concept of a kind of pop-up or continuous monument, the idea of architecture sort of conquering nature. These themes, I think, all very much apply to the habitation on the moon. And we also thought free space is very important, and having kind of ultimate flexibility to configure and reconfigure on the moon. And so the questions are, primitive space, non-hierarchical space, and now we start the resort proposal. And we decided to site the resort on the lunar South Pole because it has near perpetual access to sunlight, and also the only water that's available on the moon is there. So we're thinking that everything is shipped out by rocket, other than the water and obviously the light. And the buildings are comprised of inflatable polyhedron modules that would be shipped by rocket and then assembled. These are just some sketches, and then assembled locally on site and reinforced with protective shells of lunar regolith soil, which would be rover printed with solar-powered rovers. And the lunar soil has a special quality where you can, if it is radiated, similar to microwaving, that it will become ceramic. And so we're proposing a hybrid structure that is part inflatable and then part lunar soil. And here's an example of the clustering of all of the modules, which, sorry,
I don't know if I have to say anything about this slide. Me just looking now for 20 seconds. So I didn't know anything about the wall between the United States and Mexico before I started this. I was kind of imagining it was something like this. This isn't the wall. This is a different art wall. It's actually a lot bigger. This is actually what's in between the United States and Mexico. This is, one of the more built up sections. Right now, we have about a third of the wall between the United States and Mexico. It ranges from a really long chain link fence with a guy in an SUV checking it out. Next slide. Two really long chain link fences. But this kind of is where I started. This kind of neutral zone in between the United States and the United States on one side and Mexico on the other side. It's actually very like the Korean Yankee. So you have North Korea and South Korea, and you kind of have this neutral zone in between, which is kind of a provocative thought for me. So this is the Korean DMZ. There it is. Really hard to time your speech to automatic slides. So this is the scale of the Mexican border. It's 2,000 miles long, almost, which is basically like driving from Chicago to Tijuana. It's really long. Here's an abstracted version, which started to interest me as a border is usually conceived of as a really thin line. But what interests me is if you actually zoom into that, it becomes a thick line to the point where it becomes a third thing. It's neither A nor B. It's neither U.S. nor Mexico, but it is a thick line. So what would Donald Trump do with a thick line? The proposal is that the United States actually the United States and Mexico sell 25 feet on either side of the thin line to create a developable country for the elite that actually gets rid of the need for the United States and Mexico to border each other. So now this is an elevation of the proposal. It's a giant developed wall in between the two countries, so the countries don't touch at all. Access only through helicopter. For Donald's friends, the rich, this is the Mexican side, very horribly stereotypical context on both sides, equally offensive on both sides. And then the architecture is actually designed so that each side is perceived totally different. So what looks solid on one side is actually paper thin on the other side, and vice versa. So we don't have to deal with border anymore. Which hopefully will make America great again. Are there more slides after this? One. Now we're going to start the
Can you hear this? Hello? Hi, well, thank you. Great talks. I mean, we got all 25 architects to basically send models, make models, put in more time than they should have, all for nothing. Just for the chance of being, nothing.
So like this discussion,
For
right?
this discussion right here. So this is the start of what is going to be a traveling exhibition. Hopefully next stop, Cleveland during the Republican National Convention. Where if you happen to be in contact with the Donald, let him know, because a hashtag from him would go a long way, or Jeff Bezos.
I just want to know what he thinks of the proposal. Or we're going to pick one.
Yeah, I mean, he asked, we as architects felt compelled to deliver. So I guess we can open it up to you guys for questions or comments, and yeah, fire away, please.
All right, I'll just start.
Yeah.
As participants, how much of a challenge was it to build a manifestation physically that could not rely on diagrams, drawings, or anything more than 100 words to explain an idea?
I loved it.
Can we hear us back there?
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Finally, I don't have to write anything.
I thought it was really challenging because we always start with diagrams and then design it in 3D in the computer, and then translate that all and output it and go back and forth between 3D and physical models. But because we weren't producing anything besides a model, we actually didn't produce any of that process work. And I just kept talking to the team, and then we never built a model for the longest time because we kind of just were trying to think it all in our heads. And
So it
then
actually affected how you work on the project, knowing that that was your proposal.
it did, it absolutely did.
I think the hardest part about it was that when you're thinking about building a model or something physical, the first thing you kind of think of is like what scale it's going to be at. And so before I even addressed what a proposal was, I was like, what scale are we talking? Like, are we talking national, regional? Like, eventually the proposal got down to the building scale. But what I guess happened was that we had imagined it, an NSA topic to be a national, not issue, but a national topic. And then slowly, as the ideas started to roll, it went from like, okay, it needs to be more regional. Okay, it needs to be like a campus. Okay, it needs to be like a building. And then we slowly started to zoom in on it. But I think that just the question of like what scale it needs to be at, for me and the people I was working on with it was a really good discussion. That I think that probably only happened with just the model. Because usually you have so many different drawings to explain multiple scales. So that's why I appreciate it most about it.
You subverted that whole thing with your model. You got 3 scales in your model.
I do have 3 scales. I couldn't communicate it at one scale. And so I had to build a small, medium, and large and figure it out that way. Yeah.
It didn't affect how I work. I tend to over-theorize and under-design. And as you can see, the story I came up with was very complex, and it was nearly impossible to put it on in words, but
Mostly what I did was put little scale figures in there. I think they'll explain that.
For me, there was a kind of a factor of efficiency. So it was to take what I had already had and see what could work. in a way. So I have made a number of these collages without actually thinking about your exhibition. And then after I read your brief, I looked through, I was like, well, maybe I can make one of those. And I looked through, and then we actually started to make another one and realized it would have been way more time consuming. And so we found another one that was much more efficient, that nicely fit to your bounding box.
We gave everyone very strict boxes, really categories, that 12 by 12 by 12 cubes that you couldn't go out of, and then the tower was 12 by 12 by 3 feet, and then the wall was 3 feet by 12 by 12.
What I thought was so interesting about your project, Andrew, is it seemed like it was just a true extension of your body of work.
Yeah, well,
And-
it literally was.
I was kind of jealous watching your presentation because it really did just obviously come out of your portfolio of exploration.
Well, so I mean, yeah, it was like I'm always happy to participate whenever I'm asked to do something. So I want to do it, but it's kind of like time thing. So it's like, how can I sort of take what I already have been working on in a way and like see if there's a way to work with something else. So it wasn't, not that I like, it was like efficiency for this one.
I think it's a very valuable lesson for the students to hear.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things also that Trish said is that we gave, this was a completely open prompt where it was a first come, first served basis of topics. We sent this out to 25 people all at the same time and said, give us your top 3 of the topics you want to work on. And I think most people got their first choice.
I think I only replied with my first choice.
And I'm kind of interested to hear why you chose one of the topics. And for example, I think, we have 2 drone boards up here. One you looked at it only urban, and then Anna Johan looked at it very rural, like very different points of view on one singular topic. So I think the direction that everybody took was really different, and I'm curious why everybody chose what they chose.
Yeah, so drones are cool. I think that was pretty cool. I think what initially already stood out is that we are both from Germany, and when we drive from Chicago to Champaign and back and forth, like this, we always recognize the cities based on their water towers, because they say like Money or, other little towns, and every little town has those, and those were really, I guess that's where, it kind of came back up. We discussed a lot about the drone reports and what it meant, and it really means that a lot of people are going to lose their job. But then we think that it also is really, really important when the president built the interstate system. It connected different areas of the United States together, and we hope that drone port will also connect the U.S. and even the most remote areas that cannot be reached by cars or trucks, but only by foot. There are these areas in Alaska and in Arizona and everywhere. We actually found out about those. So rethinking drones as a public utility, much like water, and put them into every little town in the United States, and really making toothpaste accessible to everybody. Because Kevin brought up this example of toothpaste in the morning, we thought, oh, that's ridiculous, that doesn't make any sense. But I guess if you run out of toothpaste in New York, it's not really that bad. But if you run out of toothpaste in Arizona, in the middle of nowhere, then that could be really bad.
Within 150 feet of my front door, I can buy toothpaste at 5 different places.
Yeah.
So it's, and in that sense, designing in the urban setting is finding that one little sliver where you can actually be innovative. When Uber Messenger can have anything to you in 30 minutes. You can have something from Wall Street delivered in under 60 minutes. And anything. is, in a hyper city like that, where do you innovate, right? So for me, it's not necessarily what it delivers, it's how it actually takes things away. I'm not advocating for flying garbage, because I think that that's problematic, but I think that there needs to be a network that creates value in the return.
But I think garbage is very, very valid, because more people in the urban environments create more garbage, so there's an extensive need for garbage removal, and like, say, like like one of these trucks who remove garbage, it's like he has like 7 miles per gallon or something. So using drones is a lot better, cleaner.
The street below me has a waste transfer station on it. 92 garbage trucks a day
Yeah.
cross that street. And what that does to the
How many
urban
drones is that?
Yeah.
92,000?
But the drones would work throughout the night. They would work, like all the time. You wouldn't actually, they would never stop. That's a great thing.
The death to the right machine.
Yeah.
So for us, we actually were really torn between the tower or the lunar resort, and it came down to, we had just designed a speculative tower for a different exhibition last summer in Los Angeles. So we kind of just thought, oh, to be responsible, we should choose something else. And I think, at first, it wasn't obvious that there was this sort of impulse leaning toward a sort of utopian ideal. But that's the way we decided to take it, just because when else can you indulge really in something like that? Because we're also designing, real projects, and so we just sort of ran with that, and thought that if all this effort was going to go into building a resort or a lunar colony, that there should be some greater ideals that would govern space making and what that place would be, apart from just a luxury experience for humans to have. So we kind of layer that over the project.
I think that was one of the most difficult categories.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's literally no complex.
Maybe that's why we didn't build one.
Yeah.
It's just sitting on a piece of chrome. Because it was, we were thinking, and after a conversation with you all about, I really like an architecture space, and we were thinking of making that, but then it seemed too specific, because we were thinking about this resort in such extremely conceptual, abstract ways that we just kind of never could overcome, like, are we going to cast a moon surface, really? But now I kind of like the idea of going back to
It again comes down to the idea of scale. I think especially the wall, that was really a tough thing, because you're dealing with this topic, something 2,000 miles long, and then deciding how you zoom in on that.
Yeah, when I first started looking at the wall, I was like, I want to build the whole thing, because no one else can build the whole thing. And I found what's some ridiculously small scale, 55 people at it. And I was like, yeah, that's the scale I'm going to use, and I figured it was like
I can tell you just can't see them.
it was like 65 feet long, and I was like, that's not going to work. I mean, it'd basically be like etching a piece of film at that scale. So.
But I think that's why one of the things that we really wanted is that physicality of the model, those limitations that you have to work within, and also not being able to have this elaborate text or explanation. It really has to be a model that communicates very clearly as one single object.
While simultaneously being very beautiful.
Yeah.
Of course.
Why did you choose not to put the name Trump on the wall? Like, he does whatever.
Yeah, he wouldn't be involved in it in a way. If he was president, he wouldn't be, he might behind the scenes, but I don't think he'd be an active player. I think he'd be setting it up for someone else to get rich off of.
To weigh in on the question of the projects, I chose the NSA community branch because it seemed like an opportunity to design a
politically engaged architecture. It wasn't necessarily in kind of a jokey way. And I love 1950s post offices and that sort of thing, like this sort of really banal modernism. And NSA community branch, I felt like it was just sort of begging for that sort of design approach. So
what was the rest of the Prism Prime?
Priam, oh, you spelled that out. Okay, yeah, I had that in my presentation. I didn't have time to go through it. So Priam, it's like private American, because it's like a public-private partnership. That's the dumbest one. Pry Americans, so like the NSA is like prying, like asking for too much information. And then the last thing is, Priam was actually the name of, in Greek mythology, the name of the ruler of Troy, who let the Trojan horse in. So like in signing up for Priam Wireless, you're like inviting the NSA to your old phone. Yeah. It's a lot of things.
I guess for me, of the five, four already had a kind of implicitly strong narrative. So like the Trump wall, the NSA, the moon. And so the investment towers for me was maybe the one that I could sort of impose more of a view what I thought it could be. So that's probably why I did that. Since we're on the subject of topic, what topic would you add to this?
That's probably an open question.
Yeah.
Yeah, would we do 6 by 6? No ideas? What do you guys talk about at the bar?
I think I would design, this actually is in what I was going to ask. I think you should design like outposts or hub or like what the cities look like between them. I think a lot of these topics are inherently connected, except for the lunar one. I'm still trying to find how to like link that in so I know your example you went into. But like if Trump was president, like the NSA, perhaps the drones are linked to it and you find out who's buying, or you can track people by where drones are going because they're linked by ID numbers. Or there's stuff like that, so like where are these drones going to? And then how does NSA gather info from that? So I think the location or where people live is, I think what number 6 would be. That way so you can collect information from the physical point where the individual is, and then link that to like information, feed it back to David's spheres underneath. So I think the home would be that.
I think you would definitely spatially link, except for the link. Because the NSA branch can be in a tower, and the towers can actually build a wall. That interested your space here. And what else are we missing? Oh, and the drones can just fly around.
Did anybody else have the idea of overlapping, like when I was designing the drones, like this drone's just gonna give everything to the NSA? So should we be thinking about them both at the same time?
Was that an interesting thing to do, like a redesigned Ellis Island or something like as we talked about?
It was sort of positive spin on the integration question.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think refugees or immigration, that would be an interesting subject. Because Europe has a lot of refugees right now, and like every country has. I think the United States don't, but most of the world has refugees somewhere. So that would be an interesting topic. Because they shouldn't, I mean, a lot of countries don't want to put them into not tents, but like camps, refugee camps. But in Germany, there are a lot of military bases that are abandoned by the United States, so they put the refugees in this.
So one of our primary goals with this was, to have architects actually start to look at topics that are important. Does anyone want to talk about that? And what other ways are architects kind of engaging, these public affairs, and what else can we do to engage these current topics and actually be part of this discussion?
Yeah, I think, it's important for us to be in front of it, right? And you said that in Europe, a lot of these things are happening, we're responding. How do we get in front of these?
Yeah.
I think when we work on all kinds of things, and we don't have to have time to critically respond to something like this unless somebody gives us the opportunity to. And I guess this is the opportunity to do something like this. So I would say more opportunities.
After we wanted, it didn't really take that long of time. I mean, generally a project can take, I don't know if you guys do that for your product designers, but I mean, you can take after several years, and I'm sure that's really the same deal. But this was sort of an interesting design sprint. Nature of it allowed us to really, within a month, come up with an idea and cut out different things like diagrams and, scale, we figured out right away.
Construction drawings.
Yeah, right. No.
Then you would be construction.
So I think.
Laser cut drawings.
I think this allows you kind of an entity that's deep enough that you still have a way to be able to deliver something interesting. Try not to save the world, but just like take it as a solution.
I think what's productive about the whole thing is that making models is part of the architect's arsenal, right? So to just sort of focus making a model and just have an exhibition just of models, I think, then brings maybe the relevance of models again onto the table, say, for research.
Right, so what do we learn about the architectural model it's kind of a survey of 25 architecture models too, if you strip away all the connotations of what they're representing. So what do we learn about, maybe this is a question for everybody, what do you observe about craft, digital technologies influencing how we build models, how we represent things?
Was it part of the thinking behind the exhibit to go back to physical in choosing to design a model versus?
Absolutely. I also think there's something really easy about these days about making a collage that's really provocative. It's so easy. I mean, Andy does it like 12 times a day. It's like tap, tap, heart, every time.
But there's a slowness to having to make a model that I think forces you to engage with it on a different level. Not everybody has to hand cut everything, or print or 3D print, but it's still that process of making something physical really requires you to spend more time with it.
Well, and I think adding to that, the end result is a communication tool.
Yeah.
I think used by oneself by creating this piece, you get much different depth with an issue, but at the same time provide your thoughts, your experience, and your process to other people. And this is just so really important to have idea about the topic.
I think for us it was really tricky to figure out the scale of this in the beginning because first we thought we'd make a drone or like a little special mailbox for the drone, or then we thought, okay, we go to the hub where they actually send out stuff with drones, and then we ended up going there. The model is sort of a little bit odd. We kind of envisioned it to be much taller, but that was not possible. So, but we tried to really put everything in there to get people the idea of how this works.
Yeah, it was really challenging for us to choose a scale. We wanted to show the entire resort rather than zooming in and just showing a fragment of the resort. We thought it was really important to see the whole thing. And so then that led to a scale which is very low because one of the things that we discovered in research is that most of the habitations were removed that are posed, that are really thought through, are very low, and in fact they're in craters because there's a lot of danger of meteor showers hitting the structures and also radiation, and so already we didn't want to be in a crater because that would limit the view to Earth, and also there will be some shadowing happening. So we're on the ledge of a crater, or that's what we're proposing, and we wanted to go tall. We wanted to go to 12 inches, but we realized that, you know, anyone who knows anything about linear habitation and structures would just like, you know, propose through our proposal because it isn't unfeasible and impractical. So we had to be really low lying to insert this.
Why didn't you go inside?
Well, there are a lot of proposals for that. And they actually cover then the building with the regular soil, so essentially the building disappears. And I guess we just didn't want to have the building disappear, we wanted to express the form.
Yeah.
So,
In some ways, since you gave the size of the model and determined the scale, so we basically we massaged it to fit within the size given.
I mean, it was a guide. You could, automatically you couldn't do certain things anymore. We had 1x3 that our model would have looked completely different probably, and we had been able to show the different things and manufacture a mechanism going. But I think that's a quite interesting side effect of this work, starting effect, because that's what happens in the real world too.
From a curatorial point of view, it was kind of hilarious. It's like we had 3 constraints that we gave them: size. We said no water and no electricity. And we said we're going to ship to try to make it light. Yeah. So probably half of the people asked if they could go outside of the box.
Yes.
No. And then half of them are concrete. And then one guy's lights up. We didn't get any water, so that's good. We didn't allow water. So that's the one thing that they listened to.
Why didn't you give the drone force more space?
Didn't need it.
I like the fact that just going back to the question of the topic of the models, and you see in there a range of, yes, of scales, but just a lot of different model tactics. And from mine that took forever to 3D print, I was talking the whole time, like, why the hell are we doing this? Like, this is taking way too long. And you go in there, and then there's a Jenga tower, and I get the idea right away. It's like, what was the whole point of that thing? And so it's something that I advocate to the students all the time. It's like they're spending hours and days and sometimes weeks on a thing, and I'm just like, what are you trying to do? Like you mentioned, it's just about communicating an idea. And I think what you see in there is like 25 models, basically 25 opportunities for interpretation. I don't necessarily even think the text is necessary. I think that everybody kind of sees the models and they're drawn to the models, and everybody's just going to interpret what they want from it. And I think that was kind of the power of it, and like you mentioned, like collage and rendering and stuff like that. It gives a lot away. There's almost no room for interpretation sometimes.
I think that's important in this context, in the university setting, where it's still early enough in the semester for you all to observe these models. I always say if you're going to steal from somebody, you could find some techniques in there, lift them, right? And think about that. There's time to impact. And I'm sure this conversation will change differently outside of the university setting. So we ideally wanted to not have this first at the university. We wanted to have it in a very public place.
I asked Walmart and they said,
Yeah.
so aisle 12 is kind of packed.
Yeah.
That's like a big box store.
Yeah, that'd be good.
But I think that's one thing I really appreciated about what you did with Clog. Which one was the trade fair with? Sci-fi. So, I think with Clog, they found ways to insert architecture into other venues. So, like they have sci-fi conventions at the Javits Center where, tens of thousands of people show up and a topic on architecture shows up there. And you sold the most of that primarily because or Apple, right?
But it's, something that we've learned with CLOG is that it's hard to engage, for architecture to engage with larger
It's really
public.
hard.
So
I get a lot of nasty emails from people about the Apple issue and said, this is all about architecture. I wanted to learn about the iPhone. So Some people thought it was a user's manual.
Amazing. But what I think is important to consider with engaging the public, though, is abstraction doesn't really work, I guess. That's something that I try to address in my project, because it's you know, if I show the model to my parents, they're not going to get it. Like I have these basement levels. I showed it to 3 people. All of them thought that was the whole model. That, you know, you access on the bottom, and then you go up, and you go up. So you have to find a way to sort of communicate these things that all architects sort of immediately get, like that this is a section model or something like that. So I don't know, scale figures are important. I don't know what the point of that was, but yeah, it's tough.
But I think in that sense, the model does already work a lot better than trying to communicate through those drawings.
That's true.
Well, it's also about empathy in your audience. I mean, if you want to engage the public generally, the public is not going to be architects. So I think you need to communicate with tools and visual experiences that they can understand, and of course they can ideas.
Yeah, we were thinking that our model might look like a toy, like with marbles, you know, and the whole idea that we had was based on a gumball machine, so we didn't want to have it look like, you know, like something too obvious, so that's why we put like some turf on there and make it look like something really large and rural, just to make it look more serious.
It has a model railroad quality that I love.
Yeah.
It's like you understand those things. You can look at a model railroad and you understand what it is, and you understand the scale and all of those things, and that's why people like them. I don't know. Not that we have to design them.
Looking at the 45 models, it becomes obvious that irony and humor were strong themes that kind of permeated really all of them, and not only because this is a provocative, kind of speculative exhibit, but I also see that coming through in a lot of built architecture these days, and a lot of contemporary young practitioners, like the new postmodernists that are coming out of Chicago, or those teaching at UCLA, are using this idea of humor, or the idea of irony. And I guess the question is, why do you think that is, and what value do you see in that?
Let Andrew take that one.
What would you find funny? I think, you know, in some sense, maybe the last part of this discussion was also about communication. And I think humor and irony are 2 different things, first off. But I would say that maybe either one of those help in kind of making architecture communicate to a broader audience. Their respective value within how you might design a building. I think that's maybe a kind of case-by-case thing, and maybe we probably can't sort of figure that out right now. But I think it's also like, you know, what level the joke might be, like, and who can get the joke, and maybe how inside it is versus how popular it might be. So I think that a lot of architects, whether they will admit to it or not, have jokes in their work, and maybe only they get it, maybe only a few of their friends get it. Maybe it's meant for a broader group of people. So I think it's maybe a kind of way of doing it, to be aware of it and be almost tasteful. So I think.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
I don't know if you can give a short answer about this, but I guess all of you, could you say why your entries are provocative? Or just the fact that their entries really stop as things and as provocations?
Well, to be honest, when we worked on the drawing board, we thought, oh, this is so logical, there is no provocation there. I think for us, the provocation is just that, or it is sort of funny that really this whole idea of putting drawing boards all across the United States is based on like just some simple facts, and by turning these packages into spheres, which makes total sense for like a remote drone board that doesn't need a lot of electricity and where they just kind of rolled out based on gravity. I think this is a little, I think it's provocative in the sense that we don't need more. This is just the basic what we need, and there's no need for other architecture in drone boards. So in a way, the whole topic was.
The fact that you just asked why it's provocative is already provocative.
Yes.
Because everybody in the room has a different angle.
For us, I'm not sure that we really made a provocation. We saw the assignment itself as a provocation for us. And I guess, we were just trying to think about, we thought the idea, the question of what could a new type of space be that's not like Earth and doesn't have all of the sort of socio-political or socio-economic links that you have here on Earth, you really kind of say that maybe is provocative to just the idea that we would try to overlay that onto the program and try to design a space that embodies that. That was, for us, I guess, the provocation.
I think the next provocation is where does this go from here? It's how do we decide it? How do we get it to the public? How are we ending up in Walmart, aisle 11? The school is safe. This is, it's a safe place to be. You're not going to launch. There's the one woman that always sits in the back and has great questions. She's not an architect. She gets mad because you don't turn on the camera. But you guys are launching safe questions. It needs to go somewhere where you're going to be unsafe.
Yeah. I would say it's provocative simply by getting 25 models by very different architects and offices together to think about very different things.
Yeah, I mean, something like the trunk wall is like, it's disgusting, but getting an architect to design one is
Is it disgusting, or is it, it's no more disgusting than designing a prison, right? However,
It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
disgusting.
It doesn't have to be disgusting.
What provoke means. It doesn't mean that you have to get into an argument or that you have to fight. A provocation is an act to be followed by a conversation, communication, engagement, and that's what happens. And in that sense, it is a provocation.
All right. Well, I think we can continue the provocation at our next venue.
Yeah.
And thank you all for coming. And
Will there be better poster future exhibits other places?
better posters?
Yeah, that should be a thing.
Okay.